5th of October 1966. Monroe, Michigan, Enrico Fermi Atomic Power Plant Unit. 1. At 1500 hours, a sodium-cooled fast breeder operates at 20,000 kilowatts thermal, roughly 5% of design power. Control room recorders show routine traces. Operators track neutron flux, sodium temperatures, rod positions. Everything reads within procedure. Then, minute by minute, numbers begin to diverge. Control rods withdraw farther than experience predicts for the indicated power. 9 inches when 6 should suffice. 2 fuel assemblies show temperatures climbing above their neighbours. At 15:09, radiation monitors alarm. The building seals automatically. A Class 1 emergency is declared. Within 11 minutes, operators execute a manual scram. Fission stops. Containment holds. Surveys confirm no off-site release. Yet inside the opaque sodium, something has blocked coolant flow to part of the core. One small metal plate, never entered in the original blueprints, will keep Fermi 1 shut for 3 years and 9 months, and quietly reshape American breeder ambitions forever. On the 8th of August, 1956, a ceremonial shovel breaks ground on a flat site along the western shore of Lake Erie, roughly 30 miles south of Detroit. The Power Reactor Development Company, PRDC, leads the project. Detroit Edison's president, Walker Lee Seisler, champions the concept alongside Atomic Energy Commission Chair Lewis Strauss. They share a conviction: fast breeder reactors will dominate future electricity generation. The technology converts abundant uranium-238 into plutonium-239, effectively extending fuel supplies for centuries. Political and industrial commitment runs high. The facility will be named Fermi 1 in honor of Enrico Fermi. Design specifications call for 430 megawatts thermal, generating roughly 150 megawatts electric to the grid. It will be the United States' only demonstration-scale fast breeder built for commercial operation. The AEC's Safeguards Committee has already expressed concern. Fast reactor meltdown behavior remains incompletely understood. Early experience with experimental breeder reactor I showed that fuel deformation can drive reactivity changes in unpredictable ways. Prompt supercriticality scenarios, where neutron multiplication accelerates faster than control systems can respond, remain a theoretical risk. Construction proceeds with the understanding that uncertainties will be reduced before high-power licensing. Design reviews acknowledge gaps in knowledge, but conclude that engineered containment can manage any maximum credible accident. The site sits near a major population center and draws cooling water from Lake Erie. Local officials receive assurances. Engineers promise multiple barriers between fission products and the public. Behind the optimism lies a technical tension. Reviewers note that data on fast reactor accidents remains incomplete. Licensing documents carry caveats, yet the project moves forward, backed by industrial capital and federal encouragement. Fermi 1 will prove the concept or provide the cautionary data. Either outcome serves the broader goal of understanding breeder technology. Archival records from later AEC histories summarize the strategic intent. Fermi 1, a 430 megawatt thermal sodium-cooled fast breeder reactor built on the shore of Lake Erie. The phrase carries no warning. At groundbreaking, no one foresees that this machine will become better known for what fails than for what it demonstrates. Before Fermi 1 ever reaches full power, both its core design and its sodium systems will experience problems serious enough to delay operation and double the project cost. Construction stretches across 7 years. Sodium loop testing reveals leaks and material compatibility issues. Licensing disputes consume months. By the time the reactor achieves criticality in 1963, the original schedule and budget are distant memories. On the 23rd of August, 1963, at 12:35 in the afternoon, instrumentation records show Fermi 1 reaching its first self-sustaining chain reaction. Years of construction delays, sodium system tests, and regulatory negotiations culminate in this moment. The reactor is now critical. Neutron multiplication balanced precisely at 1. The core architecture reflects fast breeder principles. Metallic uranium fuel, enriched to roughly 25% uranium-235, fills a compact lattice. Zirconium cladding surrounds fuel rods approximately 0.158 inches in diameter and 31 inches long. A blanket region of depleted uranium surrounds the active core, positioned to capture fast neutrons and breed plutonium-239. No moderator slows the neutrons. The fast neutron spectrum is central to the breeding process. Liquid sodium serves as primary coolant. 3 primary loops circulate sodium through the core at temperatures between 430 and 510 degrees Celsius. Operating pressure remains near atmospheric, avoiding the high-pressure water risks common in conventional reactors. Sodium's opacity prevents visual inspection of core internals during operation. Instrumentation must infer conditions indirectly through temperature, flow, and neutron measurements. Engineers face a specific meltdown concern. If fuel melts and collects at the bottom of the reactor vessel, it could form a compact critical mass, a configuration that might sustain or even accelerate fission. To prevent this, sheets of zirconium are placed across the bottom of the sodium tank. The intent is to spread any molten fuel horizontally, reducing reactivity. Technical Director Alfred Amorosi adds a refinement, a central metal cone. This flow guide is intended to push molten fuel outward into a ring shape, further reducing the risk of compact accumulation. The cone creates a central region not covered by the original bottom zirconium plates. To close this perceived gap, 6 triangular zirconium plates, later described as petals, are welded to the cone sometime around 1959. The modification occurs late in the design process. According to later investigative accounts, these plates do not appear in some official blueprints. A documentation gap emerges. Future investigators will struggle to track which drawings show the petals and which do not. The components are installed without dedicated monitoring. No sensors track their structural integrity. No instrumentation can detect if they detach. Archival accounts from later reconstructions note simply, 2 of these plates had broken off and plugged the holes that allowed the sodium to flow. The sentence appears in post-incident reports with clinical brevity. It describes a safety feature transformed into a flow obstruction. Core monitoring relies on discrete thermocouples. Only a subset of fuel assemblies have individual temperature instrumentation. Sodium opacity means operators cannot see inside the vessel. Diagnostic techniques in the early 1960s lack real-time flow blockage detection. In-core flow distribution is assumed from design calculations and test data, not measured directly. A safety-motivated addition to mitigate meltdown consequences has introduced new mobile internals with no dedicated monitoring. Components capable of blocking coolant flow in localized regions. Early low-power testing reveals no sign of the risk. The future blockage components are already in place, invisible and uninstrumented at the bottom of the tank. On the 6th of August 1966, logbooks record Fermi 1 delivering electricity to the grid during a 60-hour demonstration run. Target power is roughly 80,000 kilowatts thermal. The reactor exports approximately 33 megawatts electric, about 22% of design capacity. Operators follow a stepwise ascension program: 1,000 kilowatts, 20,000 kilowatts, then 80,000 kilowatts. Each plateau is followed by test intervals and data analysis. The run proceeds. Neutron flux responds as predicted. Sodium flow rates match calculations. Heat balance closes within acceptable margins. Then several fuel assemblies begin showing unusually high temperatures compared with neighbors at the same power level. The pattern is localized. Most assemblies read within expected ranges. A handful run hotter. No corresponding neutron flux surge appears. No systemic cooling problem is documented. The issue is treated as a local configuration anomaly, perhaps related to assembly positioning or minor fabrication variations. Procedures permit core reshuffling to address such imbalances. Operators and engineers rearrange some fuel assemblies within the core. The run is completed. Data is archived for future reference. Expectations at this stage hold that minor temperature deviations can be remedied by core management. The assumption is that assemblies showing elevated readings are producing slightly more power than calculated, or experiencing minor flow variations within normal tolerances. No underlying structural or hydraulic fault is suspected. The pattern, hotter than neighbour assemblies without a clear power explanation, is an early signature of underlying coolant flow non-uniformity. It will not be recognised as such until October. By late 1965 and early 1966, Fermi 1 holds a high-power operating licence. The AEC expects performance data that will support fast breeder deployment in commercial settings. Political and technical pressure favours continued testing. The August 1966 run is part of the planned ascension to full power. Each successful step builds confidence. Later safety analyses will reclassify the August event. Summaries categorise it as the first indication of subassembly flow blockage leading to localised overheating. At the time, however, it appears manageable. Core reshuffling seems adequate. The October power ascension run is scheduled to proceed without specific additional diagnostics on the hotter assembly locations. An NRC index entry, compiled years afterward, notes simply, "Fuel melting incident, October 5, 1966. Significance to the design and operation of sodium-cooled fast reactors." The phrase "significance to the design" understates the event's impact. Fermi 1 will become a reference case in international fast reactor safety literature. The August anomalies are treated as correctable configuration issues, not symptoms of a developing flow distribution problem. The same pattern, hotter subassemblies with no power increase, will reappear 2 months later. By the time operators plan a similar run for October 5th, the core includes both rearranged assemblies and the undocumented zirconium petals. No one has fully modelled this combination. No analysis accounts for the possibility that safety-related internals might detach and migrate. Startup is cleared for 0800 on the 5th of October 1966. Minor issues delay the test. Instrumentation calibrations require extra time. A sodium pump seal shows slight weeping, not enough to stop the run, but logged for monitoring. Actual power ascension toward 20,000 kilowatts thermal does not begin until approximately 1420. Shift personnel include documented individuals. Operator Mike Weber monitors control rod positions and power levels. Supervisory engineer Walter J. McCarthy Jr. is on site, available for consultation. The control room follows standard procedures. Neutron flux is tracked continuously. Sodium temperatures are logged at defined intervals. Containment integrity is verified. Area radiation monitors display background levels. The planned test profile calls for reaching approximately 33 megawatts electric, equivalent roughly 80,000 kilowatts thermal to the turbine generator, over a multi-day run. This repeats and extends the August 1966 demonstration. Engineering analyses predict uniform core cooling through the bottom perforated plate. Any hotspots should correlate tightly with local power peaking, not with independent flow anomalies. Initial measurements appear nominal. Control rods respond normally to automatic control signals. Sodium flow rates register within predicted values. Neutron flux rises smoothly as rods withdraw. Temperature traces track power increases. Containment and area monitors remain at background. Operators see no reason for concern. Later, IAEA and lessons learned documents will categorize Fermi 1 as a coolant blockage accident rather than an overpower transient. At startup on October 5th, however, this classification lies in the future. The assumption of uniform coolant distribution underpins the decision to proceed with power ascension. Design models do not anticipate that internal components might obstruct flow channels. By 1500 hours, power and neutron flux look correct. The reactor is running at roughly 30% of full thermal capacity, a level reached before without incident. The control room atmosphere remains routine. Recorders trace smooth curves. Checklists are completed methodically. No alarms have sounded. No deviations from expected behaviour are yet apparent. A subset of temperature channels, however, will soon begin to diverge from predictions in a way that does not fit the reactor's design models. The mismatch will be subtle at first, within instrument uncertainty. Then it will sharpen. Within minutes, operators will confront readings that challenge their understanding of what is happening inside the opaque sodium vessel. At approximately 1500 hours, power reaches 20,000 kilowatts thermal. Operator Mike Weber scans the main control panel. Something catches his attention. The regulating rods are withdrawn approximately 9 inches. Operating experience suggests roughly 6 inches should suffice for this power level. The discrepancy is significant. For a given reactor power, rod position typically falls within a relatively narrow range. Deviations hint at reactivity or flow issues. More reactivity insertion than usual is required to hold the same power. This implies some part of the core is less effective at producing power, possibly undercooled or partially blocked. Neutron absorption might have increased, or moderating effects might have changed. In a fast reactor, however, moderation is minimal. The most likely explanation involves coolant. Automatic control briefly shifts to manual intervention as operators stabilize the run per procedure. Then it returns to automatic. The rod position anomaly persists. Weber consults the individual fuel assembly temperature display. It is located some distance from the main control panel. He walks over and checks the readings. 2 assemblies are substantially hotter than the rest. The pattern echoes but exceeds the August anomaly. Only approximately every 4th assembly is instrumented with individual thermocouples. The full spatial extent of the temperature deviation remains unknown. Weber can see that specific locations are running hot, but not why. In a sodium-fast reactor, coolant flow and neutron behavior are tightly coupled. Sodium density affects neutron energies. Temperature changes alter sodium density. A localized reduction in flow can raise fuel and cladding temperatures while global neutron power remains apparently stable. The reactor can appear to be operating normally on bulk parameters, even as local conditions deteriorate. Fuller's later account, based on interviews and records, notes Weber's concern that the rods were too far out for the heat being generated. The observation is documented. Weber recognizes that something is wrong in a specific quadrant of the core. Instrumentation cannot yet identify a mechanical blockage. The readings suggest only that behavior is deviating from design expectations. Elevated temperatures and abnormal rod positions indicate a local core problem. With no direct way to see sodium flow, the issue is interpreted initially as an instrumentation or control anomaly, not mechanical blockage. Operators discuss possible causes. Thermocouple drift is considered. Core configuration effects are reviewed. Within minutes, however, this mismatch will be joined by a third signal that eliminates ambiguity. At approximately 15:09, plant radiation alarms sound. A Class 1 emergency is declared according to predefined procedures. The reactor building seals automatically. Ventilation isolates. Access doors lock. Emergency checklists are retrieved and opened on the control room desk. A Class 1 emergency indicates a plant-centered anomaly with no confirmed off-site hazard. Procedures focus on containment integrity and internal radiological surveys. Health physics teams don protective equipment and prepare survey instruments. External monitors are checked. Initial readings show no breach of primary or secondary containment boundaries. Perimeter stations continue to register background levels. Operators observe multiple simultaneous deviations. Local temperatures in specific subassemblies are rising. Global neutron flux is not showing runaway behavior. Reactor power appears stable on bulk measurements. Yet radiation monitors inside the containment have alarmed. The combination of signals, hot assemblies, abnormal rod positions and now radiation alarms forces conservative action. At approximately 15:20, operators initiate and complete a manual scram. Control rods fully insert into the core. The fission chain reaction terminates. Neutron flux drops rapidly from 20,000 kilowatts thermal towards zero. Fission power falls within seconds. Decay heat, several percent of prior power, continues to be generated by radioactive fission products. This residual heat requires effective sodium circulation through every fuel channel. Even at the relatively low power of 30% capacity, recently operating fuel generates decay heat that must be removed continuously. If coolant flow is partially blocked in certain channels, decay heat alone can drive temperatures high enough to damage cladding and melt fuel. The scram stops new fission, but does not eliminate the cooling requirement. On-site surveys proceed methodically. Health physics teams measure dose rates at multiple locations inside the containment. No breach of the primary sodium boundary is detected. Secondary containment remains intact. Stack monitors show no elevated releases. Subsequent reviews will confirm no measurable off-site dose above natural background. The NRC's later summary states, a zirconium plate at the bottom of the reactor vessel became loose and blocked sodium coolant flow to some fuel subassemblies. 2 subassemblies started to melt. Radiation monitors alarmed and the operators manually shut down the reactor. The sentence condenses hours of confusion and investigation into a single clinical statement. The scram and containment systems perform as designed, limiting consequences. They do not, however, resolve the unknown internal condition at the bottom of the core. The plant is shut down and apparently stable. No one yet knows which assemblies have melted, how many are affected, or where the blockage is located. Instrumentation provides only indirect clues. Weeks after the incident, with the reactor cooled and firmly shut down, engineers begin systematic sodium flow testing. The goal is to infer the extent of fuel damage without direct visual access. Fermi 1 becomes a diagnostic puzzle. The post-incident analysis team includes engineers from Atomic Power Development Associates, APDA, and reviewers from the AEC. Technical leadership falls to investigators who must work within severe constraints. The core remains radioactive. Sodium remains opaque. Instrumentation is limited. Each step must be planned carefully to avoid creating additional hazards. Sodium is circulated through the core at controlled conditions. Differential pressures across different channels are measured. Higher than expected pressure drops indicate flow restrictions. Lower flows suggest blockages. Initial inference suggests no more than 6 assemblies are significantly damaged. The estimate is based on hydraulic signatures and comparative measurements. Reactivity experiments follow. Control rods are carefully and incrementally withdrawn under strict oversight. Neutron responses are monitored. Changes in reactivity help confirm that at least some fuel has melted and relocated within specific subassemblies. The experiments are conducted at 0 power, with only neutron sources providing baseline counts. Any unexpected criticality would be detected immediately. Discussions focus on the criticality risk. The core contains metallic uranium fuel enriched to approximately 25% uranium-235. Relatively small changes in fuel geometry can significantly affect reactivity. If melted fuel has compacted in an unfavorable configuration, rearranging assemblies could theoretically trigger prompt criticality. Movement must be slow and highly controlled. Off-site, regulators and the public hear limited detail. Internally, the incident is classified as fuel damage with no off-site release. Core configuration uncertainty, however, remains large. Flow tests constrain the maximum number of affected subassemblies, but do not identify the exact cause of the blockage. Hydraulic signatures indicate restricted flow, but cannot distinguish between fuel debris, cladding deformation, or foreign material. Later, IAEA papers will list Fermi 1 among several notable core damage events, attributed primarily to coolant blockage. The company includes sodium reactor experiment in the United States, Lucens in Switzerland, and Saint-Laurent A1 and A2 in France. Coolant blockage emerges as a design class, a category of accident scenarios requiring specific attention in fast reactor safety analyses. The next phase requires physically removing fuel assemblies one at a time. Each extraction must account for the possibility of unknown damage states. A single incorrect move could, in principle, change reactivity in unpredictable ways. Engineers prepare detailed procedures. Transport equipment is tested. Hot cell facilities hundreds of kilometers away stand ready to receive damaged assemblies. Between May and August of 1967, shielded transport casks leave Fermi 1 carrying removed fuel assemblies. The destination is a hot cell facility operated by Battelle Memorial Institute in Columbus, Ohio. Remote handling systems there allow destructive examination under conditions that protect workers from intense radiation fields. Removal logistics are complex. The core top plug must be rotated to align with each assembly position. Grapple mechanisms engage the assembly's handling socket. A transfer drum receives the assembly and moves it to a shielded position. Rail cars transport casks from Michigan to Ohio under escort. Each step is documented and witnessed. Hot cell examination reveals critical evidence. 4 assemblies show significant melting. 2 are stuck together, fused by molten metal. The discovery confirms that the accident affected a localized region, but more than the initially suspected 2 subassemblies. Fuel melting fractions vary. One assembly shows approximately 10% of its fuel melted. Others show lesser degrees of damage. Metallography of cladding and fuel provides forensic details. Zirconium cladding shows evidence of prolonged high-temperature exposure. Fuel swelling and distortion patterns point towards sustained local overheating rather than a rapid power excursion. There is no indication of a fast reactivity, insertion event. The damage signature is thermal, not explosive. Most of the melted fuel remains within the cladding and assembly structure. There is no evidence of large-scale fuel dispersal into the sodium pool. No sodium-fuel explosive interaction is documented. The fuel that melted did so gradually, over minutes rather than seconds, allowing time for heat conduction and some structural containment. Regulatory reviews incorporate these findings. The AEC receives interim reports indicating fuel damage but effective primary containment. The classification of the event as severe but fully internal is reinforced. No breach of the reactor vessel occurred. No radioactive sodium leaked. Stack monitors recorded no elevated releases throughout the incident and shutdown period. The 1968 APDA report carries the formal title, Report on the Fuel Melting Incident in the Enrico Fermi Atomic Power Plant on October 5, 1966. The document runs to hundreds of pages. It includes thermal analyses, metallographic images, flow reconstructions, and regulatory correspondence. It becomes a primary reference for subsequent fast reactor safety studies. Hot cell analysis confirms where fuel melted and that damage is localized. It does not, however, identify the physical object that initiated the blockage in the sodium plenum below the core. That discovery requires a different approach. With most fuel now removed, engineers can begin draining sodium from the vessel. For the first time, they will be able to see the bottom internals. An unexpected silhouette awaits. As sodium is gradually drained from the reactor vessel during August through October of 1967, engineers prepare for visual inspection. A periscope is fabricated and inserted into the vessel through an access penetration. Lights illuminate the lower plenum. Operators peer through the optics. An object is visible at the bottom. Its location corresponds to the sodium inlet region below where the melted assemblies had been positioned. Initial descriptions circulate among the investigation team. Media reports later characterize it as resembling a crushed beer can. The phrase captures the deformed, crumpled appearance of the metal. The object is clearly not fuel. Its shape and reflectivity suggest structural material. Engineers must now design a retrieval device capable of cutting through an inlet hole and extracting the metal without dropping fragments deeper into the vessel or creating additional obstructions. The operation is conducted remotely due to high radiation fields. Specialized tooling is fabricated. Cutting equipment is lowered into the vessel. Sodium residue complicates the work. Liquid sodium reacts violently with water and moisture, requiring inert atmospheres throughout. After careful cutting and grappling, the object is removed intact. It is transferred to a shielded container for analysis. Material analysis identifies the sample as zirconium. The composition and dimensions match the bottom shield plates and the triangular segments, petals, that had been welded to Amorosi's conical flow guide around 1959. The object is approximately 15 inches by 8 inches in size. Its shape indicates severe deformation, consistent with thermal cycling and mechanical stress. The Detroit Free Press's retrospective notes that by early 1968, the errant metal was identified as a zirconium metal plate that was installed in the reactor as a safety device. The phrase captures the irony. A component intended to mitigate the consequences of core melt has become the direct cause of localized core damage. For the first time, investigators have direct physical evidence linking an internal zirconium component to the flow blockage. The plate was not part of the fuel. It was not cladding debris. It was a deliberately installed safety feature that broke free from its mounting, traveled through the sodium pool, and lodged precisely where it could restrict coolant flow to a subset of fuel assemblies. Investigators now confront a more fundamental question. How did a welded component detach from the cone? Under what conditions did it migrate through liquid sodium? What sequence of stresses caused it to lodge against inlet holes rather than settling harmlessly elsewhere? The answers require reconstructing thermal and hydraulic histories that were never directly measured. During 1968 and 1969, drafts of the definitive investigation report circulate among APDA engineers, AEC reviewers, and international experts. The document is titled Investigation of the Fuel Melting Incident in the Enrico Fermi Atomic Power Plant on October 5, 1966. Authors Duffy and Jens lead the analysis. Their reconstruction integrates recovered hardware, flow testing, hot cell data, and thermal modeling. The sequence emerges with increasing clarity. At some point before October 5th, possibly weeks or months earlier, 2 of the 6 triangular zirconium plates attached to the cone broke free from their welds. Thermal cycling and vibration likely contributed to weld fatigue. Once detached, the plates became mobile within the sodium pool. Sodium flow carried them upward. The plates became trapped against the underside of the core support plate. This perforated plate distributes sodium to individual fuel assemblies through inlet holes. The displaced zirconium plates blocked a subset of these holes. Flow to specific subassemblies was reduced dramatically. Later estimates suggest approximately 97% obstruction to the most affected channels. During the October 5th power ascension, these flow-starved assemblies received inadequate cooling. Sodium entering at reduced rates could not remove heat generated by fission and decay processes. Fuel temperatures climbed, zirconium cladding softened, metallic uranium fuel began to melt at approximately 1200 degrees Celsius. The melting progressed over minutes as operators raised power, unaware of the hidden blockage. Quantifying the event provides critical context. Approximately 4 assemblies experienced significant damage. 2 underwent partial fuel melting. Several % of total core fuel inventory melted, a serious event but localized. No recorded pressure spike occurred. Sodium did not boil in other channels. The primary boundary, the reactor vessel itself, remained intact throughout. Later IAEA and independent reviews will list Fermi 1 among roughly 14 major core damage events in early power reactor history. Of these 14, approximately 6 are attributed to coolant blockages rather than pure reactivity excursions. Fermi 1 becomes a reference case. The incident demonstrates that mechanical reliability and flow distribution in fast reactors can be as critical to safety as reactivity control. The conical guide and zirconium petals were conceived as part of severe accident management strategy. They were intended to shape the geometry of molten fuel in a beyond design basis scenario. Instead, they directly contributed to a new, underappreciated hazard: small, mobile, untracked components capable of blocking coolant paths under normal operating conditions. An IAEA overview later summarizes, coolant blockage was the dominant cause in several early core damage events. The sentence appears in lessons learned literature. It reflects a shift in design philosophy. Subsequent fast reactors incorporate enhanced blockage detection, improved in-core flow diagnostics, and more robust qualification of internal components. Late design changes become subject to stricter documentation and review. In 1975, journalist John G. Fuller publishes a book titled We Almost Lost Detroit. The work focuses on Fermi 1 and frames the October 5th incident as a near-catastrophic event for the Detroit metropolitan region. Fuller emphasizes the proximity of the plant to a major city and the uncertainties inherent in fast breeder technology. The title phrase, "We almost lost Detroit," embeds itself in public discourse. Fuller's narrative highlights worst-case scenarios. He discusses the potential for molten fuel to achieve reconfiguration, leading to prompt criticality. He explores the theoretical consequences of containment failure. He presents the incident as a narrow escape. The book circulates widely. It is reviewed in major media. The phrase "almost lost Detroit" becomes shorthand for Fermi 1 in popular memory. The technical and regulatory record presents a different picture. The NRC's information summaries on Fermi 1 emphasize specific facts. A zirconium plate blocked sodium flow. 2 subassemblies started to melt. Radiation monitors alarmed. Operators manually shut down the reactor. Containment held. No radioactive release occurred outside the primary boundary. Perimeter monitors recorded no off-site dose above. Natural background levels. Dose metrics provide quantitative context. Available summaries indicate measured exposures consistent with normal containment operation. No contamination was detected beyond the reactor building. Stack monitors showed no elevated releases throughout the incident and subsequent shutdown period. Off-site monitoring stations measured radiation levels indistinguishable from natural background, typically a few tenths of a microsievert per hour, or approximately 0.02 to 0.03 millirem per hour. This represents a small fraction of the dose from a single chest X-ray accumulated over the entire incident duration. In 1976, Detroit Edison responds with a publication explicitly titled, "We Did Not Almost Lose Detroit." The pamphlet challenges Fuller's framing. It points to containment performance. It cites measured dose data. It argues that the incident, while significant from an engineering and economic standpoint, posed no acute threat to public health or safety. The contrast between popular narrative and technical classification becomes a case study in risk communication. How one phrases an event shapes memory. Fuller's title implies near disaster. Edison's response asserts containment and control. Both statements coexist in the historical record. Both influence how Fermi 1 is remembered. From a public health perspective, the significance of Fermi 1 is engineering and policy-driven, not epidemiological. No measurable off-site health impact is documented. The event's importance lies in what it revealed about fast reactor design assumptions, internal component reliability, and the adequacy of diagnostic instrumentation. It reshaped regulatory expectations for sodium-cooled systems. The tension between technical classification, a contained coolant blockage core damage event, and popular narrative, a near disaster, influences public perception of breeder reactors. It contributes to the political environment surrounding future projects. While debates over almost losing Detroit play out in print and media, the plant's actual operating future is being determined by economic, technical, and regulatory decisions about restart, not by the accident itself. By February of 1970, the problematic cone and zirconium petals have been permanently removed from the reactor. Engineers judge that these components provide no net safety benefit, given their demonstrated failure mode. The vessel bottom is modified. Additional flow checks are performed. Structural reviews confirm integrity. Fermi 1 receives permission to reload fuel. Restart preparations advance through spring. In May of 1970, during a routine inspection, approximately 200 pounds of sodium leak from a pipe joint. The leak is detected quickly. Sodium contacts residual moisture. A sodium-water reaction initiates, exothermic and potentially violent. Operators inject argon to blanket the reaction zone. The building is temporarily sealed as a precaution. Cleanup and repairs consume additional weeks. The reactor restarts in July of 1970. Power ascension proceeds cautiously. By October of 1970, Fermi 1 reaches its original design power level of 200,000 kilowatts thermal. The milestone comes more than 4 years after the October 5th incident. For a brief period, the reactor operates as intended. Data is collected. Performance is monitored. Economic and regulatory realities, however, undermine long-term viability. By 1970, total project cost reaches approximately $132 million, more than double initial estimates. Extended shutdown periods have eliminated revenue generation. The AEC extends the operating license in short increments, but views Fermi 1 as a limited-value prototype rather than a long-term generating asset. On the 27th of August, 1972, the AEC issues a formal denial of the application for license extension. The order includes suspension of operations. PRDC reviews options. Appeal is considered, but judged unlikely to succeed. In November of 1972, PRDC accepts the AEC's decision and begins final shutdown procedures. The NRC's later environmental documentation notes succinctly, 1966, October 5th, fuel melting incident, plant became inoperative for 3 years and 9 months. The phrase captures the operational impact. Nearly 4 years of downtime transforms Fermi 1 from demonstration flagship into a cautionary example. The localized core damage incident, compounded by subsequent sodium system issues and rising costs, makes Fermi 1 economically and politically unattractive. The combination contributes to a broader US decision not to pursue similar large sodium-cooled breeder reactors domestically. Plans for the Clinch River breeder reactor will face political and funding headwinds, partly shaped by Fermi 1's mixed operational record. Even after shutdown, Fermi 1's design lessons continue to appear in international fast reactor safety literature. Inlet geometries in later reactors reflect awareness of flow blockage scenarios. Diagnostic systems incorporate features aimed at detecting assembly-level temperature anomalies. Documentation practices tighten around late design changes. The instant's technical legacy outlives the facility itself. Decades after its shutdown, Fermi 1 appears regularly in IAEA surveys and academic analyses of early reactor safety. The incident is grouped with Sodium Reactor Experiment in the United States, Lucens in Switzerland, and Saint-Laurent A1 and A2 in France. These cases form a distinct category, core damage events attributed primarily to coolant flow disruption rather than reactivity excursions. Technical lessons from Fermi 1 influence subsequent fast reactor design standards worldwide. Engineers recognize the need for robust internal component design that avoids small mobile parts capable of blocking flow channels. Weld qualification for sodium-immersed structures receives enhanced scrutiny. Inspection protocols before reactor operation include verification of internal component integrity. Improved in-core diagnostics become standard. Newer designs incorporate more comprehensive temperature monitoring at the subassembly level. Flow measurement systems detect anomalies earlier. Some reactors adopt bayonet-style inlet configurations that are inherently resistant to blockage by single loose parts. Documentation practices for late design changes tighten across the nuclear industry. US breeder reactor ambitions shift after Fermi 1. Later projects face political and economic headwinds. The Clinch River breeder reactor, proposed for Tennessee, encounters funding challenges and public opposition, partly rooted in concerns amplified by Fermi 1's experience. In 1983, Congress votes to terminate the Clinch River project. No commercial-scale sodium-cooled fast breeder has since been built in the United States. Radiological outcome provides important perspective. The Fermi 1 incident produced no recorded off-site health impact. Containment functioned as designed. The accident's primary significance lies almost entirely in engineering and policy domains, not in epidemiological effects. This distinguishes it from other nuclear events, where environmental releases had measurable public health consequences. One Lessons Learned compilation notes that among 14 major core damage events in early power reactor history, approximately 6 were caused by coolant blockages. Fermi 1 exemplifies this class. It demonstrates that localized mechanical failures in uninstrumented regions can drive major strategic decisions even when containment works and public doses remain negligible. The phrase, "we almost lost Detroit," persists in cultural memory. It shapes public perception of nuclear risk in ways that technical documentation alone does not counter. Risk communication studies cite Fermi 1 as an example where narrative framing influences policy outcomes independent of radiological metrics. Fermi 1 did not radiologically lose Detroit. No city was endangered by radiation. No evacuation occurred. No long-term contamination affected Lake Erie or surrounding communities. A small detached zirconium plate altered the trajectory of US fast reactor development and became a reference case in nuclear engineering education. The incident remains a study in how one undocumented design change, introduced with safety intentions, can reshape an entire technology's future and test the boundary between engineering reality and public understanding.